Hey, how's it going? We're going to get started. Yeah, I'm Dalton. I'm a partner at Y Combinator, and we're going to be doing office hours today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Couple things to note. I know that a couple of live office hours happened beforehand. We're going to try to spend a little bit of time even after these to talk with the different companies. 20 minutes for office hours is not a normal time period that we'll do stuff. So we're going to try to do it as fast as possible. Apologies in advance. We might interrupt you just because we know how short the time is to try to get as much information out of you for us to communicate as well. All right. Thanks a lot. I think.
Yeah.
How you doing?
Good.
Kevin.
Carrie.
Yeah.
Nice shooting.
Dalton, how's it going? And then I think you'll need to use the mic, right? Yeah, the handheld mic. Yep.
So just very quickly, introduce each of yourselves, like your name, your role at the company, and then name of the company and what you guys are doing.
Yep, I'm Shruti. We're with Hub House, and this is
Carrie, and I'm the CTO.
I'm the CEO.
And then what does Hub House do?
So Hub House does co-living. We provide co-living spaces for professionals. So if you're new to the area, you've just gotten here, and you want to rent a room out in a house with a curated community, and you want it to be set up, you can move into one of our rooms.
And then what does co-living exactly mean?
Co-living means living with a group of people. So basically shared housing.
How many people?
Our houses are 5 to 10 people. Some co-living spaces can range up to 30, but ours are 5 to 10.
And then is the characteristic that you're sharing a bathroom with a bunch of other people also? Kinda
Not
like a dorm?
necessarily. Some are, some don't.
Gotcha. And then how are things going for you guys so far?
Pretty well. So we launched 18 months ago. We are now at 220 tenancies across over a dozen cities in the Bay Area and Los Angeles.
What's the occupancy rate for those?
We currently have an occupancy rate of 94%. Most of the vacancy rate comes from our launch vacancy. So our vacancy rate, not including the first 2 weeks and the last 2 weeks, is about 2%.
2%. So when you say 94%, like how many people does that mean, like in 220 properties?
Oh, sorry. So 220 tenants total.
Tenants.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
220. Yeah, that includes. So that doesn't. So we have more rooms than 220.
We have about 230 rooms.
Yeah.
230 rooms.
So in terms of the timeline, when did you first start? Like you said 18 months ago, but what did that look like? The very first tenant, I guess.
Yeah, so first thing is we got a house, and we both still live in our hub houses, but I moved into our very first hub house, and then we got a bunch of tenants, and the first few houses was very much so a learning process. We were trying to figure out what works, what doesn't, and try to create this backbone for our co-living spaces. Just to answer that question.
It took about I think it's 7 houses in the first 3 months.
Okay, and so you guys take on the lease. What are the terms of the lease that you take out? Is it just a standard 1-year lease, but then it goes month to month?
I see. Yeah, so we do 1 year to 2 year leases for each of our
Okay.
houses, and we continue with 1 year to 2 year.
Do you need any special permissions from the actual owner of the property to do this?
Yeah, so we are completely upfront with our owners. We let them know exactly what we're doing. We sell it as a benefit. We act as a property advisor to the owners, and we guarantee them rent every month, even if the house is completely vacant.
And then what's the margins that you get currently?
30 to 40%.
40%. So let's just take a typical property. You have like one house that has how many rooms on average?
6.
6 rooms. And then how much are you paying rent on that house?
So roughly $6,000.
$6,000. Okay. And then you guys will make 40% on top of that, usually through renting out.
So if I'm a property owner, why is this a good deal? You said an advisor. I don't really know what that means. Like, why am I like, wow, please have a bunch of people coming to my house, and like maybe it's going to depreciate a lot.
Yeah. So most of our property owners have pretty large properties which are hard to rent out. So we're able to quickly rent out a house which maybe rents for like $6,000 to like $8,000, $9,000. And instead of having to deal with a typical roommate situation where you have to deal with 6 or 7.
But the landlord doesn't care about that. As long as they get paid, like
Exactly.
this has been going on a while. The landlord is like, I don't care. As long as the rent shows up, whatever you guys are doing, not my problem. Right?
Well, so at the end of the day, as a landlord, you want one check. You want to make sure your house is taken care of, and you want professional people living there, and you don't want to have to deal with it. So we take care of all of the hard stuff. If there are any property problems which come up, we advise them on what to do. But at the end of the day, all you're getting is one check, and you don't hear anything from us.
So what's the rate of growth? So how are things going right now? You said you're doing pretty well, both like is revenue increasing monthly or weekly?
Yeah, so so we just raised around, and after we raised, we've kind of scaled back and we've been growing out our team.
Why would you scale back?
We wanted to hire a team, and we wanted to make sure our processes were going well.
We were
Oh, sorry.
working about like 80 to $100 weeks each of us, and we were kind of reaching the limits of what we could do without a team.
Okay, so just to go back, so
does
what's the
that
rate
mean?
of growth right now?
About 8 to 10%.
8 to 10% a month.
Yeah, and we're growing. So before that, we were doing about 15
How
to 20%.
fast are you adding on new properties? Is that pretty much your bottleneck, finding supply?
Right now, our bottleneck is operations. So we want to make sure that each of our houses is launching smoothly and well. So that's
So
what
right now you don't have a playbook for launching it. How many properties do you have?
we have 40 properties.
40 properties, and you feel like you still don't. Why do you feel like you don't have a playbook after 40?
I mean, we definitely do have a playbook. So we do have a step-by-step process that we go through. But we've just gotten our team on and we're building out our tech and training so that we're able to scale sustainably and provide a fantastic experience to each customer.
So when you say you want to build out a team to build tech and training, can you just dig into that a little bit? Like, what do you need the team to do?
So we now have a team. So before, until December, I was the only full-time person working.
Okay.
And in December, Kerry came on full-time. Kerry was working as a co-founder before that, but he came on full-time. And then we had one employee in December. So the past few months, we hired on a property manager. We hired on a person to help out with partnerships. And we want a second developer to basically help us build out the tech to automate a lot of these manual processes that we're doing, such as like responding to emails, responding to tenants, with property management inquiries that come in. There's ways to automate a lot of those steps.
We do look at ourselves like a marketplace, but it's not a true marketplace because we're not connecting the landlords with the tenants. And so we do have the supply and demand factors of it. We found that it tends to go back and forth between it.
That
We
doesn't
have
make any
to
sense to me. I don't understand that.
Which part?
It's two parts.
Yeah.
Still, right? And you're connecting them together. So I don't.
So
get
the
why you-
tenants never deal with the landlord specifically. And so we're not connecting landlords with the tenants. We have to make the deal with the landlord themselves.
Right, but it's one ecosystem of supply, one ecosystem of demand, and you're bringing them together.
we
So,
think of it that
regardless
way.
of how the connections happen, it still thinks that way. It
Yeah.
still works that way. What I'm trying to figure out is how does this sort of when and the thing is like, do you feel like part of co-living is like this movement? Like people are realizing like I want to work. And it's a lot nicer if I can work with a bunch of other people. But the places where I want to work, I take it you mostly are in the Bay Area, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're in the Bay Area and LA.
Then it's like really expensive to get places. And so for the places where I'm trying to get in there really quickly, I might not have enough capital to move in. So like co-living is a way to like step into that. So I'm trying to think is like, do you have a reliable source of supply for people where this like, let's say this is a really big trend that you're going to be able to onboard. And I'm trying to figure out is like, at what point do you feel like you are ready to add on new properties? And at what rate do you add on properties?
So we're picking up approximately 4 to 6 houses a month.
4 to 6 a month.
Yeah.
Okay. And then how long are they vacant before? Like how long does it take to get a house up and going?
So the time from when we sign a lease to the time the first person moves in is about 2 weeks. The time from when we launch the house to when it's 100% full is another 2 weeks. So about a month before it's a completely up and running hub house.
About a month.
So we've seen a lot of people work on this idea, and it seems like you can get about as far as you have gotten, which is really great. But because you actually have to take on the lease and because you have hard costs, sometimes these can look much more like a real estate business than a tech business. And so I think what I kind of want to get at is, are there ways that you can not hold the leases? Like, is there a way you can make this much more efficient from a capital basis? Because right now, this is basically a real estate business, right? And it sounds like there's some tech in there, but I haven't really gotten from you that tech is like the differentiating factor that will make, like, that it sounds like it's a lot of operations work to sign leases and then get people in units, which is like pretty traditional residential housing type business. So how are you thinking about what lets this get huge, right? Like what are your thoughts along those lines?
So part of that, so there is a good deal of tech. I do agree that it is not the key differentiating factor that we have. Some of it's different, and we automate a lot of the operations that are happening. And
What are
one of
those
this,
for like, hey, the faucet's broken, can someone fix it? And you open a ticket? Is that what you mean? Like, can you tell me what that means?
so more along the lines of automatically finding houses to go and see, using some different methods there, automatically posting, and so we have a constant in stream of probably about 100 tenants reaching out to us a day. That's being
Okay.
automated by tech. A lot of the inter operations going between that is operated by tech. None of that's very. Some of it's unique, some of it's not so much unique. I'd say the bigger differentiating factor, which we haven't mentioned yet, is the community fact that we build into it, which is a lot of people come because it's cheaper and because it's a place that they need quickly. But we have a very strong community element and create an infrastructure in each house. So people are actually forming these really strong bonds.
How do you make that happen?
So part of that is we set up monthly dinners and we give them formats of these are things you should go over, and we throw events every month for the entire community. And so we're actually connecting these people, and for that reason, we've had a continual growth. While we started with month-to-month leases, we've moved up since then. Our average stay length has been a continual process upwards since the beginning, and it's still going.
Quite honestly, I feel like this really comes down to cost. Like people want to move into cities in places where it's highly desirable, but property is like not abundant. And they're trying to figure out how can I get to this in a cost affordable way. So co-living goes a way to sort of make it happen. You can advertise all these community stuff. It's stuff that you can tell the people, but it's no different from an apartment or condo complex. It's like, hey, we have these community stuff. We have a pool room. We have these like monthly dinners or barbecues. Like it doesn't sound any different because no one says like we don't have a community here. We don't do anything nice for the people. We make sure there's a bunch of shitty people here living inside of it. You don't sound any differentiated from it. So all I can think is like this is pretty much it's either a land grab because you have more great properties than anyone else, and then like onboarding feels so simple and easy. Basically, it's like someone contacts you on average how long before they're moved in? Is that a month?
No, so it's it's as short as a week or two. But I think the difference is that the houses access to rooms isn't easily accessible right now. Access to rooms in single family homes with curated communities, the only way you can get access to these is through Craigslist or by setting it up yourself. So we're unlocking a whole new market, which
The whole
is
thing is you build a brand that gets people to
For
trust
people in
you.
the audience, are dead houses still a thing? Rob Levitsky, anybody? Dead houses? Anyone living in a dead house? Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Okay. So clearly, there's people that want to do this, and okay. So it sounds like we have about 5 minutes left. So what are the things you're thinking about that can make this as constructive as possible? Because like, just to summarize, sounds good. You're making money. Like, good job. What might be tough is what's the move to make this huge? And let me give you some options. Sometimes people that are working on the startup idea decide to actually buy the properties because then you can renovate them, and then then you actually own an asset, and it becomes almost again like a real estate business. And I've seen that's kind of the WeWork model, right? So I've seen that happen. On the other hand, you could try to make this as asset light possible, where maybe you're not taking the obligation of the leases, right? And then you can grow really fast and somehow have a special deal with the landlords where you can just like grow really fast, and then you're a true marketplace because you're not holding any of the liability that right now you're holding. Or you can, again, maybe you found the just right compromise between the two. So this is sort of where I would think about from the long-term perspective. Do you have thoughts around where you see this going in a year or two?
so the latter is probably the direction we're going to go. The reason why we haven't is just because it hasn't really been a problem until now. But in the future, as it does become more of a problem, we do want to shift more of the liability to the property owners.
Got it. And one quick question while we're on that. Is there any insurance implications for this? What kind of insurance do you have to take out?
So we do have a pretty comprehensive insurance policy to cover our properties if our tenants do damage anything, up to like if the tenants burn down the house or something, they are covered. And then we are also asking our tenants to get renters insurance on top of that.
If your problem right now is like operations and you're recruiting, trying to find people, like what is your pitch to people to get people on board to say like, come and do this startup? Because it's not many people's dream to be like, I'm going to work on basically the new form of like apartment complexes or dorms, basically dorms for like millennials.
I mean, so I think the biggest piece of our company is our community. So each of our houses is almost like a family-like environment, and people can really buy into that. I mean, I think a lot of people out here don't really have access to that. And around universities, sure, some people have access to things like dead houses, but most people out here move out here and are lonely and don't really know people. So being able to offer the sense of community and the friendships that form from within our community is probably the biggest pitch that we make.
And so you think that's the long-term defensibility? You think it's ultimately the community? I'm just trying to make sure I understand. So you're saying like, look, we're going to have the best community and the best brand for community, and that's what will attract people. Because again, with this kind of business, it's very easy for new entrants to come in. So if we use the example of Airbnb, anyone can make an Airbnb clone, but what they actually had was network effects, where just like eBay, it's hard to compete with eBay because they have the buyers and sellers. What's the equivalent here? It is the community? Is that what you're saying?
So it is branding, a lot of that.
Yeah.
And we do have a network effect because it's not just community in the houses. We connect all the houses to each other as well. So we do have a bit of a network effect there.
Okay.
I do think branding is the defensibility part. The other key part that Shruti's mentioned to me in the past is most of the competitors can do one or two things well. So Campus was a previous company who did something very similar, but they had very low margin on it, and they did the community aspect really well. People loved staying in them, but the operations was awful. And then there's other companies that do the operations very, very well, and many people have come to us and said, everybody talks about community, but you're the only ones with it. And so we feel that what we have is different, but we are also good at operations. And so that's the part that we are trying to scale and trying to hire for tech to turn it more and more into a tech business and to take all the lengthy processes that are taking operations, like we're hiring for more engineers right now, and making that as automated as possible so we can do less of the actual, the signing the leases and the direct things there.
I think all the community stuff are good. It's stuff for you to focus on. It'll prevent churn from happening. But for the conversion, my feeling is your bottleneck is probably still supply. So whatever it is you need to do to relieve yourself on like what allows us to say we want to take on more properties. Because really what you've set up is like your liability is that first month's rent that you need to take on. That's like which is pretty decent sort of capital liability. So if you can figure out like how can I turn around where like I sign a house, right? And I can turn around. I think you also have to put a safety, like a security deposit also. So it's almost 2 months worth of rent that you're taking on before you can have it covered back. And how long before you have that?
So it's about a month. About a month. So
It's going to be about it's going to be about 4 months before you cover both of them, before cover 2 months worth of rent.
well, we collect back security deposits from our tenants.
Great. And then I think that's all it comes down to. Like you need to figure out how to do all the community stuff up ahead of time, but everything that allows you to say like, I want to take as many properties as possible and figure out how to jumpstart them, and like get people into the houses or homes very, very quickly without losing quality. And so the whole thing is like, what is that exact playbook like? And you want to almost time yourself. It's like, okay, I've identified a property. How long does it take? What is our checklist that's very, very reliable for us to determine if it's viable or not? Go in there, figure it out. And that's where part of the tech is going to be, seeing like how much can we do online. And then the second part of it is going to be like we send someone down there, they do a very quick assessment, and you have a team that quickly turns around the place, takes the pictures, put the listing up there, and gets it out to people. So that's like the first supply. And then your demand is just like being very proactive on getting the demand, so that a lot of the tenants, like you get like testimonials, you send it out to whatever universities or wherever people are going to be looking for housing, and so make sure that they all think like Hub House is the first place I go to consider moving to a new city. It's like I want Hub House to be there because I know that's a good, even if it's transitory. It's like I want to go there, be there for maybe 1 to 2 months, and then I'll transit into something better, or some percentage of them say like I just want to stay here because this is the kind of community I want to be with. Imagine most people are going to eventually graduate. Nobody wants to live in a co-living forever. Some people might, but that's actually, I think, the thing I most worry about. Co-living, kind of like co-working spaces, the thing I always get nervous about in terms of brand erosion is that it's not an easy way to like churn people out. And the thing is like in places where you go where great people will graduate, what ends up being is like it slowly starts rotting with people who like can't leave. And it's like, I don't have anyone else that loves me enough or wants to live with me. And it looks like online forums, it looks like co-working spaces, it's just like people don't want to be in those spaces anymore because it's like, it's all filled up with people who like never left and they start getting grumpy, et cetera, et cetera. It's just like one of those places. But what you want to really pay attention is like, how do I figure that out? Like, how do I make sure that this stays fresh? How do I make sure that like people who might be creating rot will not like poison the rest of the house?
Yeah, to paraphrase, these kinds of businesses, churn kills you. And the founders never realize that they have high churn until, like, you may be like, oh, we have really great churn. Everyone always says that. But like, and you don't have enough data yet. But over the long run, sometimes things can creep up on you. And if all of a sudden you start to have high churn and then you're on the hook for all these leases, like these can get tricky. This is a lot of the food delivery type startups. Like there's a whole class of things that don't work. And they're like, we have positive margins and we have low churn and we have great, like they all say the same things, but if you really dig into them, the secret hiding in their numbers that the founders don't want to admit to themselves is that actually churn can get you. And if you have hard costs like warehouses, not for you, but for other people, if you have all these hard costs, and then you have like some down months, like you have to pay your rent every month. You can't get out of it.
Like if community is everything,
Yeah.
then the tools you want to think about also are like the equivalent of what you might see in like moderation tools. Like we have to build all this stuff to work on communities at scale. How does that work for like within homes and houses? Like who do we have to empower within our community to make them sort of work and carry things onward? Lots of great real life communities that have grown to be really big, they have to be really careful of like how they sort of set that up. So there's going to be this delicate balance between that you're actually going through right now between like I need to achieve growth and revenue, but also need to make sure the community is like taken care of. And so like the moment I think you choose this way above this, then there's a sacrifice. But the thing is you have to figure out like how do I get these to work in tandem in a way that doesn't break everything. And hopefully this trend, and this is the other thing I always worry about, is that this is a trend that just might break over time. Like just cities and governments are building enough housing that basically people are able to find cheap housing on their own. They just live by themselves.
From your perspective, what do you think the biggest risk is? Like, is it you need to hire operations people? You know what I'm saying? Like, what do you think is like if you had, in the future, let's say it didn't work, and you're like, man, it was this reason. If you had to guess, what do you think that is?
We definitely do run a risk that if the market crashes, rents could just crash. And we are locked into 1 to 2 year leases, which is why we try to restrict it to 1 to 2 year leases.
Yeah.
I think that's a big one. Can you think about it?
Yeah, I think I would agree that that's the number one risk. The other part is not being able to be able to continue to scale because operations costs are not able to be automated in a valid way.
Yeah, and like for your own edification, I think a good thing to do would be to amortize all of your costs for operations and your time when you're calculating your margins. This is a classic thing people do. Is like, we do food delivery and we have positive margins, and it's just that they sell a burrito for $10 and it costs them $7 to make it. But if you include delivery cost, if you include support cost, if you include returns, if you actually bake in all this stuff, they are definitely not positive margin. And so I think in your case, just for your own edification, try to bake in some of these costs you have from an operations
you have
basis.
your 80 hours that you guys have
you
burned
gotta
out on.
put those into your margin calculation, and that'll just help you know that you're actually building a great business versus you're just like leaving out some of the costs in your margin calculation. Yeah.
All right, we are out of time. Thank you so much. I know it flies by.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi.
Hi, how's it going?
Good. How are you guys?
Good. Okay, so what's your name?
My name is Ash.
Hi.
Hi, Ash.
Shay.
Hi, how's it going?
Hi, Shay.
Good. Nice to meet you. So we are Lambda Intelligence. I'm CEO. And we built an API that allows developers to extract product information out of digitized receipts, so receipt images. And turns out there's huge volumes of data that's locked up in these
Before
receipts.
you go into your backstory, can you be really clear? So who's the customer?
So we're actually selling to mobile app developers. So we've got a mobile app developer who we just signed a contract with. They're our first customer, but they're paying us $2,000 a month right now for processing basically product information out of receipt images.
Okay, so you guys offer an API to be able to take receipts and just like give structured information back.
Exactly.
Off of that.
And then can you give me one more use case? Like, why does this developer need this?
So the core piece here is not just the OCR, but it's also mapping the shortened product descriptions and the prices to the actual product, the full product name, description, brand, all of that type of structured information.
So, but what does their app do? So, like, why would I want to download their app? What do I get to do with it?
So they're a loyalty card vendor.
Yeah, so they're using this to better their app and better target themselves to their customers. So that's why they need this product information.
So I always get nervous with API companies because basically APIs is like the bottom rung of infrastructure for like software projects, and so like they tend to want to be like commodities ultimately in the end, and so the great API companies are going to be like, okay, if we're going to figure out how to do this as cheaply as possible, because this is going to eventually become a commodity, then like which ones are going after markets that are super, super huge. So that's why I'm very interested in who the customers are. You're like mobile app developers that need to read receipts. How many of those are there
So-
in the ecosystem?
That's actually a good question. There are only 200 mobile app developers, but the second side of the business that we are focusing on is that brands are really interested, deeply interested in this type of data. So we're in talks with one of the top brands, with Kraft, and they've expressed interest in getting this type of data from us.
So okay, so your real customer is CPG companies.
Exactly,
But
yeah.
the thing you need to, okay, so you have like a multi-step process. You're like, are you giving the API away for free?
No.
No.
Why not just give it for free? If the real customers are these giant CPG companies, why not just be like, mobile app developers, we have a really great like OCR receipt reading thing, have at it, and then because you have the best data collecting all that information, then you're able to actually close these enterprises.
That's kind of our plan going forward. Right now, we're able to get some revenue off of just providing this OCR API to our mobile app vendors, and so that's kind of our way of bootstrapping.
I think it'll just slow you down. The thing is, like, how bootstrapped are you? Like, are you going to run out of money?
We are
now.
completely bootstrapped right now.
I see.
Yeah, and right now they're paying us $2,000 per month for processing their receipts. This is on track to scale up to $15,000.
And sorry, just like you process the receipts. Like, what are you pulling out of the receipt, the product data? But like, why are they giving you? That's like a lot of money for an app developer to give you. Like, why are they? What is the thing that they can't build themselves that you can build that's like super useful to them?
So the thing that we got is that we built a bunch of scrapers, and we've got some partnerships in works.
So are they email? Are you scraping their email? Or are you going to what? Like, what are you scraping exactly?
We're scraping receipt images. So like
So
people
the
take
user has to-
photos.
okay, the
Like
user
physical receipts.
photographs a physical
receipt.
receipt,
Yep.
and then the app developer calls your API and
With
passes
the-
it like a GIF.
Yep.
And then like you OCR it, and you're like, okay, this is what this thing says.
Yep.
Exactly.
And structure it for them.
Okay.
So that it's not just the
And
receipts,
they
but the
need
discounts.
that to do loyalty. Okay, so I'm just making sure I really understand exactly what your API does. Okay,
Yes.
you get it?
Yeah, I do get it. It just makes me nervous because if your real customer is a CPG, it's like, what's your real business model? Like, how much data do you need to collect for Kraft to say, like, we'll even look at this?
So
I know it's got to be a lot.
yes, they want 1 million receipts a month.
Gotcha. So all the mobile app developers that potentially need this, how much?
So
That much? Because I feel like the people who mostly are going to track receipts are going to be people who are tracking expenses. That's the only app I use that I take a picture of my receipt. Nothing consumer related do I do that.
And there's loyalty stuff, but going along this line of thinking. So if your real customer is a CPG, and this is sort of everyone can extrapolate from this in the audience, but like maybe you should just be building the receipt tracking app that does loyalty. Like it seems like you're trying to use this API thing as like a shortcut, and like it's going to be hard. But you're like, well, we don't really know how to get 1 million receipts, so let's just build an API, and like other people will get receipts, and like that kind of sounds like wishful thinking, unless. And it's great that you have his first customer, so congrats on that. But like to get 1 million receipts, are they going to have 1 million receipts?
So they're on track. So they want us to do about 500,000 receipts right now. So
Okay.
they're getting us close. But and so we'll need to work with a couple others.
They're actually processing that many?
They're getting that many, and so that's one of
And
the
then
reasons.
okay, along this line of thinking, like, and they're cool with this, right? Because sometimes what's tough with an API company is if you're doing something, and that it's really straightforward how you're monetizing it. Like you're kind of a middleman, and like eventually people like to squeeze out middlemen, right? And so maybe they're like, hey, this is really valuable. Maybe maybe the app that you're selling the API to also wants to sell us to CPGs. You see the tension there?
Yeah.
Yeah, we see that. And actually, we've done research, and CPGs are buying lots of data from third-party companies like Oracle, Datalogics,
Yeah.
Experian, and they're spending millions of dollars to get this type of data. And what's interesting is that this data is more aggregated in nature. That it's mostly transactional. And what we are getting at is like product-level data that we are focusing on, which we know like brands really want.
So that makes sense. But I think just from a scale perspective, like my understanding of what data brokers want for ad targeting is like tens of millions or hundreds. Like the scale that you need to build a data business is much larger. Like, have you seen anyone, even with millions, like maybe for millions they give you
So
a
the
small.
closest ones I've seen to people doing this is like they're offering companies for free. So grocery stores, electronic stores, retailers, basically for free e-receipts. They say like, we offer this technology, e-receipts for free. And then what they do is they take all the data and what they have is like, it's good for those customers, it's good for the retailers because they're getting information they wouldn't have otherwise about their customer base. And then they resell the data as a data play to CPG and like even bigger retailers. And so the whole thing, it's a race to the data. So if it's like, oh, I closed this company, they're doing 500,000 receipts. Well, okay, maybe this is easier than I think. Then like, what's the barrier for you closing more people?
Right, and I think that's something that we're actively trying to go after more of these kind of data sources, and so the more data sources that we can get, obviously that improves the value of our.
Yeah. So how's that going? Like, have you said there's like 200? So have you emailed all 200?
So we've emailed about 100 of them so far.
And what have you learned?
We've learned, our response rate has been about 25% so far, and we've learned that the current mobile app vendor that's providing us this data, like them, others are also interested, and they are willing to share their data because they are experiencing similar problems. They have
didn't
all
tell
of
me
these.
You had 25 people respond to you. Why are they not customers? That's actually the question
So
I'm interested
we
in.
actually only launched our private beta with this mobile app vendor about a week and a half ago. So we're still super early on this, and so we've got like a list of meetings like next week.
Gotcha.
And so one of the reasons why they're not customers yet is because our sales cycle is a little bit, I think, probably at least a month or two.
It's still pretty good.
Yeah.
But
So-
I mean, these aren't really enterprise prices that you're charging.
Right.
Okay. I think for API, like the biggest thing is like for any API is like you have such a long cycle because you got to meet with like someone on the CTO. You have to have someone actually try the thing. Are people going to be invested? And is it meeting at the right time? Right. So it's like at the time that someone's developing the app and need to work on the feature is at the time that they sort of need your product or service. So it's really a matter of like you need like all cylinders going at once to have as many of those people try because you don't know at what point that all of a sudden there's a proper nexus for the sale to actually close or usage to actually happen. When you talk to like Kraft, how much were they willing to pay?
So they were looking at 20 cents a receipt.
20 cents a receipt for a million receipts?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, fascinating.
So one thing, this is just like a general purpose piece of advice is like when you're dealing with large corporates, they employ lots of people in the business development role, and their job is to meet with people and to find innovative stuff all the time. And for every deal that they actually do, and for every contract they execute, they probably meet with 100 startups. And so we meet with a lot of startups all the time that have similar things where from their side of the table, you just ask for something crazy, like go get 1 million receipts and then we'll look at it and maybe we'll pay. But I doubt they're saying that in writing, right? Did they send you a contract?
No.
Okay, well, so like you can give people these impossible tasks just like for fun and see if they come back with it. But even if they do come back with it, that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to do the deal with you. And so we're always talking to startups that they believe the best case scenario, and it's so good to be optimistic, so I get why, but they believe the best case scenario that, hey, this huge Fortune 500 company is gonna do a deal with my 2-person startup and they're gonna give us $1 million. And man, does that rarely, like usually to pattern match here, usually you have to stair step up and you start with smaller customers that say yes more quickly, and it's for smaller dollar amounts. And you have to do that for quite a while before you're able to get one of these deals. Sometimes people call them silver bullet deals. It's like the deal that makes your startup where you go from 0 revenue to $1 million. Somehow the universe makes those things rarely happen. And so I think in your case, one negotiation tactic here maybe is to be like, hey, like we don't have 1 million receipts, but why don't we start with a pilot? We do have whatever.
500,000.
How about that? Let's start with that and like, let's just get this going and let's do our first data drop and let's get this on paper. And what you can do when you negotiate with these kinds of people is to try to like, if they're saying, come back with this really hard thing, and then maybe I'll say yes, move them down to something you can do, something that's more minor, and then try to get it in writing. And once you get something in writing, it's so much more likely they'll do the deal because talk is cheap, man. Like anyone could say, oh, we'll give you $1 million if you do whatever. But to get someone that works at a corporation to put something in paper, they're either in come up with an excuse why they can't, or they're actually serious. And think about how much better that would be for you as founders if you had something in writing, because then you know this is real, and that can give you so much more confidence that you're going down the right direction. So that's always something I would suggest. This goes for everybody that where you're dealing with these big organizations, is try to get anything in writing. Yeah, 5 minutes.
The thing I don't like about this kind of code is inefficient. Like one, you're working on like commodity level data processing, it's being set up, and then you have to do one thing before you can do the other thing. All right, and it's a two-step process, and so there's so many additional risks. So to me, it's always like, all right, if I'm trying to get this other thing, how do I make that go really, really fast to prove out this sort of nature? So that's why my first instinct is like, you should just make this free. Like, it's like if your mobile developers really want this, and everything comes down to like you having as much data as possible, then you make sure that you get as much data as possible, as quickly as possible, and that means like, doing it at a scale that other people won't be able to sort of compete. Because I firmly believe like down the line, like this technology for OCR processing for like receipts and stuff, like that's going to be fairly common.
Maybe this is a dumb question, but is there a reason why like Expensify and all the receipt tracking things aren't just doing this? Like why can't the CPGs get access to all these other receipt tracking data things?
I mean, what we've seen so far is that a lot of the accuracy levels in receipts is still pretty low.
Interesting.
And like, especially because you can get at the direct OCR, that's pretty good at this point, but it's going from that OCR kind of piece to an NLP piece that a lot of companies either are really good.
Do you actually need the SKU? Is that what you're saying? Like, is that they can get pricing data, but they don't have the actual SKU to map it back?
Exactly.
Okay.
That's exactly what it is.
Okay.
And it's one of those things. Like this is a problem that I actually solved, and when I was co-founder at a healthcare company, we had lab reports that we actually had to match to like individual SNOMED lab codes, and so I did that there, and so we were able to do it for 40 million patients.
That's great. So here's something to think about when you're at this stage. Is like you think about what are my strengths? What are the things that we can do really well that no one else can do? And what are the areas where we're on the same level playing field with everybody else? And so I feel like what I'm getting from this conversation is that a lot of your strength is in this technology.
Yep.
And it is in the fact you can build this amazing OCR. And it sounds like you've been trying to find what the best possible market is. And so by doing a bunch of customer conversations,
Right.
You ended up saying, hey, you know what? CPGs have money and we can use this technology we already know we're good at. And so I would think of your core strength as being the technology. And on the CPG side, until you have your first thing in writing, that's still in the question mark. It's not a strength, but you don't, it's not like in the bag in the way that it sounds like you have this technology and it works today, right?
Yep.
That's in the bag. Like you can take that to the bank. And so I would think about, thinking about what your strengths are and then maybe being open-minded to how you monetize it. Because it could be, until you get this right, until you lock in this risk, that this may not be the best possible market for this technology.
We call it being promiscuous.
Be open-minded to ways you can use this. Like other people may be like, hey, you don't need 1 million receipts. We'll give you money today for this other, like semi-related. Like it could be really close to what you're doing or it could be a little farther away. We don't know. But you have something really special and you have.
How long ago did you talk to Kraft?
So we talked to Kraft about 3 weeks ago.
Great. So and then is the deal closed with the $500,000?
No, we are in relatively early conversations, but they've
Oh, so you have.
With Kraft.
With
No,
Kraft.
no, no,
and
I
that's
got
with
you.
Kraft.
The
Yeah.
deal
developer.
closed with the app developer.
Yes.
Yes, the deal is closed
Do
with
you
the
actually
app
have
developer.
data for $500,000?
Yes.
That's awesome.
Okay, you should go immediately back to Kraft. It's like we currently have
Let's do a pilot.
$500,000.
Right.
Would you
Just work
guys
with them.
interested in doing like a pilot? Sign a letter of intent to like start looking at the data we provided to you. You guys can check to see if like is it what you're looking for, because that will help you know that you're delivering something on time. And then like have them sign a letter of intent. All it's going to say is just like okay. And then if we you're going to initially look at this data, we'll work back and forth to see like is this what you're looking for? This is going to be the format you want. And then when we have 1 million receipts, we'll start talking about pricing.
Because like again, just put numbers on this. I would say when a startup says we're in discussions with a customer, the close rate on that is like 10%.
I discount to 0, and
Let's
even
just say
with
10. I'll be between 0 and 10%. It's very low. Versus if you get an LOI, then I'd discount that to like 50%, because maybe even 60.
5%.
What's that? 25. All right. I guess I'm more optimistic than Kevin here. And then once you have a signed contract, then obviously it's 100%. But like from our side of the table, we've seen so many people that are in discussions with all these great sounding deals, and we're like, well, can you get it in writing? And they're like, then they go try to get it in writing, and they're like, nope. So that's such a good test at this stage, and it doesn't cost you anything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The other piece of advice is everything Don talked about in terms of like what you have in the bank, in terms of what you're good at. Another way of thinking about it is that like that is the default for your business. The default is the technology, the OCR. It has to work, and it has to work better than anything else. You have to do this other thing, usually at a startup, that is going to actually determine whether you'll grow and be really successful, and that is going to be sales. And so that is the part you have to work 10x harder on. So this thing that you're not very good at, you actually have to spend, ironically, a lot more time on it to make your company better. And so yes, for the sales, like you're going to talk to all the rest of those mobile developers, try to get them all in discussion and close them to get the deal. But also you've got craft going on, but also you should talk to as many other CPG companies also as well to see, it's like, is there a market beyond these guys? Is it similar sort of pricing? What do I need to understand? What needs to be delivered? Because I'm actually, basing everything that I'm going to give to CPG companies on what Kraft has said. So it's really like by the end of like the next like 2 months, it should be like you've talked to and figured out how to talk to all the other mobile developers, and you've talked to like 50 other CPG companies at the very least. And that's almost all your time. It's almost no programming or coding. It's just developing the language for like, do I understand what is the process for closing these deals, which is actually going to make me money. We're out of time.
Awesome.
Guys, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, how's it going? I'm Dalton. How you doing?
Hi, Kevin.
Hi.
Right.
Hi.
Cool. So we are working on Comaful, a place where people share and read short stories. We found a new format that's a little bit like a picture book. So there's a little bit of text on each page, then there's a background image that relates to the text, and you tap through to flip through the pages of the story. People share anything from poetry, fiction, as well as random blog posts about what they're doing in their daily lives. Currently, we get about 100,000 monthly uniques, and mostly teenagers currently using
How
the
many
site.
stories are being created?
20,000 have been created total, about 1,500 a month.
So let's say I'm one of your active users. What format do I consume this in? Is this a mobile app? Is this a website?
Right now, it's all mobile web.
So, okay, 100% mobile web.
Yes.
Okay. And what's the breakdown of what devices they're on?
It's about half and half on iOS and Android.
Okay. And then what's the geolocation of those folks? What countries are they in?
It's really leans towards iOS in America and the rest of the world in Android, so it's still
That
60-40.
makes
Yeah.
sense. Okay, so 60% iOS, US.
Yes.
Cool. And then what are the countries that are non-US out of curiosity?
Philippines is a pretty popular one.
okay.
India.
UK, yeah.
UK, India. And then what would be the breakdown, say, of the Philippines on that one? Like 10, 20%?
It's like 15%.
15,
Yeah.
okay.
Who's your most popular storyteller?
So there's a girl in LA, and she basically writes like kind of fourth wall fiction stories. And she already had an audience before joining Comaful, and she brought a good chunk of her audience over.
Gotcha. And so, like, what does popular mean? Like, does she have, like, you guys have, like, a thing like subscribers?
Yeah, so she has about 700 followers. So we have people who have more followers than her. However, she gets the most likes on her stories.
Gotcha.
She gets the most
How
engagement.
often does she publish?
Probably a couple times a month.
A couple times a month. Gotcha. So,
And sorry, like, just I want to really picture it. So, and then when she publishes, what is her media? You said there's a few things people can make. What is the thing that she makes?
Fiction stories.
How long are they usually?
They take about 3 minutes to read. They're about 1,000 words.
Cool. Would you say there's any similarity between this and some of the apps that are like taking off right now that are like collaborative fiction? What's the name of one of them? There's like three.
Hooked, Tap,
Yeah. Those
yeah.
are at the I've seen those.
Right.
Is this, if you squint at it at all, does it look like any of those?
It's a very different model. Those are built as games. So there's a subscription model built into them. However, we have very similar users. So many of the target users use both, or if they're conscious about the money, they use Comaful. So that's kind of the similar audience, but different play.
So do you have in-app purchases, and do you have anything analogous to that?
Currently, no.
Got
We
it.
don't have a mobile app yet, so that's.
Oh, well, okay, sorry. I'm just trying to think of how those companies work. Okay.
do you see this as like how do you see, what's the big version of this? Like what's the metaphor that you think of?
Metaphor-wise, we see this as kind of how these teens interact with the written word. So you see Instagram and Snapchat as these very, very visual creatures, very short-form types of content. However, the written word really hasn't seen much change. And as a result, a lot of the stories that you can only tell through the written word that you can't tell through a Snapchat or an Instagram kind of get lost. And for us, we want to be the bridge for this new generation to the written word and those types of stories.
These stories are like permanent, so they exist in a space.
Are there some stories from like a year ago that are still like super popular as per the permanence question?
Yeah.
They still get hits. I wouldn't say they blow up or they get us consistent huge amounts of traffic, but it shows up on search sometimes. Sometimes it still resurfaces in sharing and Twitter.
Do you have a sense of what percentage of your users come from SEO?
Very few. We get like 700 clicks, I think, per month.
What are the most consistent sources of traffic? Like when you said it's the authors promote it, is it they like post it to Twitter and Facebook and then that drives traffic?
It's pretty much all.
This is what success looks like to me in this sort of space. It really comes down to is like you've built a platform that allows people to get famous. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, it is.
So, and because like I think there's like 3 drivers. Oh man. 3 drivers of like desires by most people, and it's like money, then like sex, and then like power or
7 deadly
influence,
sins.
right? Well, I don't know, it's only 3.
Right, 3.
And so
gluttony.
that influence is like the biggest thing. So like, does your platform allow people to get really popular? Do they generate stuff that lots of people want to see? And until you like hit that, the thing's dead in the water. So it's like, what do I do to bring and onboard the very best storytellers, the very best people? And ideally, it's like you guys are constantly generating these stories, and they have to be really, really great. But also, it's like hopefully your community is generating stuff, and then are you able to promote them better than they can even promote themselves? Like something has to happen there, and that's like your only goal. Like you can try to monetize, et cetera, but I think it really comes down to is this a platform where it's like if I use this, it's like, or I want to tell stories on here because people actually read or experience them. It's like similar to what you saw for like Medium. The whole thing is like, what do you do next? I don't know. That becomes really hard part. Sometimes you end up raising a bunch of money and it doesn't work out. But the whole thing is you have to at least get to the point where like it's a platform that like gets people really popular. So everything has to do with like looking at what is somewhat popular and saying like, how do I multiply that? How do I replicate that? Is there a viral portion of that where people see those and they start making things for themselves? So it's like, I would go and just figure out like, how do I get like, let me see here. Best story I heard from within the YC community was like Twitch. Like basically they launched a streaming platform, and what they tried to do was like, some people were already streaming gaming on YouTube. And they contacted all the top streamers on there and said like, what do we have to do to get you to come to our platform? And they did whatever they wanted, like because they knew that like if it's a power law curve for content, right? So only a handful of people are going to be the most popular, and so like that gives you the best head start. And so they built whatever features they like, super nice them, etc. And so where are the very best storytellers for your sort of format? And I would think it's like creative people who have been really good at Snapchat or Instagram or whatever, and say like, look, you want more than this? We can offer this to you, and you have to figure out what do they most want, and then build those sort of features. Have you started doing that?
Yes. So the last while we know a lot of top creators, and that are
What's a top creator?
So
look
someone
like?
who has 10,000, 50,000, 100,000
No,
followers.
I want you to go find people that are like the top ones.
I see.
You have to talk to them and figure out what would it actually
So like
take.
the best-selling authors, the 1 million followers plus.
Could you start pulling people off Tumblr, because Tumblr's
That's actually most of our traffic. So when we say
Okay,
social
there
is
you
the
go.
bulk of our traffic, like 80% is from
because like
Tumblr.
Tumblr, Yahoo's not really taken care of, and I imagine you can pull like the top Tumblr people, right?
Yep. So we actually are friends with almost all the top Tumblr creators.
Yeah.
What we've been thinking about is critical mass, and we think that there's a certain point, like we want to spike everything with all of the users coming together at once, where you hit this critical mass point, and theoretically, supply meets demand.
I would not even think of it like that. That's just like too complicated. It's just like all the popular kids, and I'm just going to systematically talk to
So
all
just
of
land
them.
grab, get as many people.
As you can, and you, because what you're looking for is inspiration, and you don't know what it's going to be. You don't know who is going to be the one that like makes the platform take off. You don't know what is the piece that they're going to make. So you need just a lot of lightning striking. So hopefully, like people go like, "Holy crap! What's this new platform?" So
I agree with that. I mean, like, look, I think that founders that are working on consumer internet stuff undercount how many social things get to your scale and then top out. Like they think everyone knows the story of Snapchat and Facebook and they know about things like that, but man, even back in the day, there were a lot of Facebook competitors, like hundreds, and a lot of them had millions of users, tens of millions of users, and
It's not meaningful.
And the thing that's tricky about consumer internet, if you're not going to monetize, by charging your users, is the only way you can ever build an ad business is you need hundreds of millions. And so I think think about Tumblr itself. They had trouble with their ad business, but remember, they were the winner. For every Tumblr, there were like 10 other little blog sites, which it sounds like you guys are experts. So you remember them, right? There were other like wannabe Tumblrs that had decent, even LiveJournal itself. LiveJournal was the
was huge.
original
It was the big
Tumblr,
thing.
but like that. And so the point I'm
LiveJournal.
making is I agree with Kevin. If you're going to do this kind of business, you usually want it to grow as fast as you can and get those economies of scale. Otherwise, you can get stuck in the 100,000 to million user range and then like top out. And then what? Like those are I know the founders of a lot of those types of ones, and those are rough, right?
I feel like you want both a bunch of users and then a bunch of different stories. Like I think, again, be promiscuous. Like, what are the top things that people have done on Tumblr? Recreating it on your platform. What are like top tweet storms, right? That's like series of like small pieces of text, and then tell them on your platform.
And as per his Twitch thing, just ask them what would it take for you to move everything over from Tumblr. Like, what features do we need to build for you to take everything from your Tumblr over here and then put up a Adios Tumblr blog post and then like point to your site. And then if you just did that systematically, that was the Twitch playbook. Cool. I think that would work. I think now is the time to raid the Twitch the Tumblr users. Yeah.
One of the most popular things we have is that it's a two-directional thing. So people take content from Tumblr and then post it on Comaful, and we have an export function. Every social site has a different preferred format. So on Tumblr we export as a photo set. So if you share on Tumblr, it automatically generates a photo set that's pretty and fits on Tumblr. And Facebook is different. Twitter is different.
You should also look at all the people making the little stories on Medium too.
Exactly.
Still all of them as well.
We also have embeddable stories too.
So, the whole thing is like figure out, talk to the top storytellers, talk to the top people who are on all those different platforms, figure out what it's going to take to bring them over, or start moving some of that stuff over automatically and just showing it off to your community and seeing like what sticks, what people really like, what goes around.
Because consumer is different. Like I think a lot of times people like out in the audience world, they hear these consumer things, which is just get big, get big, get big, and that is what we're telling you. But just for everyone else in the audience, that's not the case if you're doing like B2B. And if you're like this is not like one size fits all advice. But like if you're gonna, hey, you're launched, you're doing consumer internet, you have 100,000 MAU. Like okay, like you made it this far, you've gotta like power through here, or else if you end up stalling out,
you're dead in the water.
Then what? Like you don't have enough users to really monetize. And that's, we've just seen a lot of people stall out at this stage. So in your case, you got to grow.
Yeah, we are in the problem-solving position here.
Yeah.
Well, you need to generate whatever it takes to get people the word of mouth about your thing. Is like, oh, if I'm a really good creator, I tell the stories on this platform, I can get really big.
And one other piece of tactical advice, I would look at SEO. Usually, like the way you get really huge, I built a consumer site. I got it up to 25 million MAU, and SEO was a big part of that. And the way you do something like Quora, where you get hundreds of millions of MAU, is SEO. Yeah. So I would try to start tracking
embedding
that.
helps us get backlinks and help us rank some of those stories that normally wouldn't rank.
We've almost we're approaching SEO currently right now. Yeah.
Okay, good. Because like that's the sort of thing. It doesn't cost you anything, and that'll just get the flywheel spinning for you to hit that escape velocity. 5 minutes.
Any questions for us?
I think the biggest challenge for us, obviously, is getting from our 100,000 to 1 million, right? Like that's the next big phase. You've already kind of gone over different strategies. I'm curious what other companies that you've seen going through YC who have, successfully gone from that 100,000 to 1 million.
It's still parallel. It's always parallel for those kind of communities. So the top ones bring almost all the traffic, which is why I'm saying like everything you have to do is like, how do I bring on celebrities onto the platform, or I turn people into celebrities?
Well, and along those lines, here's the pitfall: don't pay them.
Right.
Don't pay them. Sometimes I've seen people try that. That is not like paying for traffic when you don't have revenue is like
They need to love it.
And once you pay them, they also expect to be paid every
That
time
is
to make something.
That
They'll
is
never make
exactly right. As far as my understanding is, Instagram never paid anyone.
Right.
Snapchat never paid anyone. All their clones sure did, right? But that's what I'm saying. YouTube wasn't really paying for traffic, but all the wannabe YouTubes that were trying to raise money were paying for traffic. So whatever you try, don't just take what he's saying and be like, yeah, we're just going to pay some celebrities and
Right. Right. Yep.
It's not a cost-effective way of growing.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think if you have the dev cycles, I don't know if you do, but I would consider a mobile app. One advantage from a retention perspective is that you can do push notifications.
Yes.
And that way, if someone is subscribing to something and you do a push notification to their followers, then you're ensuring a much more, a tighter feedback loop than maybe you have now on mobile web.
Definitely. So the mobile app
How's your
approach-
email? What are you doing with email? Do you have-
Because they're teens, email has been pretty tricky in terms
Yeah.
of getting high response rates. We tried messenger bots, so we get some
Yeah.
decent response rate there. Still nothing huge or significant.
I would keep experimenting with those. Again, you're asking what have people done. You have to reach out and touch people for them to not forget your thing exists. Think about it. There's a million apps out there. There's a million. Everything is competing for our attention. And if you think about tools like Facebook, it's basically a weaponized attention grabber, right? They have thousands of people working on making sure that you're constantly looking back at it, right? Very smart people. That's all they do all day is try to steal your attention, and you're competing with them for attention.
Exactly.
So I think just doing some really basic stuff, continuing to iterate on email, if chat is the right thing to do, make sure people remember you exist and that they are a member of your community and that they should go check out some new stories. Otherwise, it's going to be tricky. One experiment you could do, I've heard someone give this talk before, is go create a Facebook account with a fake email and don't add any friends and look at how many emails it sends you. I think
done that, actually.
it sends you 50. I'm exaggerating, but the point is they realize that if you don't add any friends, that you're going to have a bad time and that you're useless to them, and so they're very aggressive about emailing people. Otherwise, they know they've churned you. So anyway, if you have users that are gonna churn or on the way past churning, well, just remind them that you exist. That's best practices too.
Makes sense. Great.
Yeah.
Guys, thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Best of luck.
Thanks. Okay, cool. Well, I think that's it for us.